Welcome to the Mind Duck Books podcast, episode 47, counting down to 50.
Yeah.
And Pablo's back. Thank you so much for being back. It's been a long time.
No, thank you.
Last time we talked was the 1984. We just mentioned it's probably one of our best episodes. Listen to episode 38.
I was about to say 39. I almost guessed it right.
But you're already at 47, so you're getting close to our June special.
Yeah.
And I hope you'll be back more often.
For June.
For June, and not only June.
Yes.
Today you said you have anticipated this episode more than the June episode.
Yes.
Why is that? I wonder.
Well, to give a little bit of background, I finished reading this book about 2 months before Philip. I have been accumulating like a need to talk about this book for about 2 months. And I have so much to say. And also I have recently finished the second one, like last week maybe or 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I really want to talk about this.
Me too. I've just finished it yesterday.
So, yeah.
I finished it yesterday at 1 a.m. and I messaged you and I was like, what? What is this? So angry.
Yeah. I was very happy this morning when I woke up and I saw your message. Yeah.
So this is going to be a long episode. We're going to talk about Hyperion.
Yeah.
By Dan Simmons. 500 pages book, part of a 4-book series.
Yes.
And I wanted to do two quick things. I want to give a big shout out to Sam and Danielle from the Book Retorts podcast. This is a fellow podcast that we mentioned on one of our first episodes. I like listening to them. Their podcast is, one of them picks a movie or book, usually a book, and they try to sell it or describe it to the other person while the other person has no idea what's happening. And one of the best series of episodes they've ever done is about Hyperion. And they covered the first book in 6 episodes.
6 episodes.
Which each episode is like 1 hour and a half. And then the sequel they covered in 7 episodes, which again, it was like an enormous undertaking.
Yeah.
Big shout out to Sam from Book Retorts. Check out bookretorts.com. And please go there if you want more of this. Because they're the experts. We have barely scratched the surface.
Yeah.
Sam said, DJ Shrike is always a winner, bringing his sick beats and kittens to the party.
Kittens?
So I'm not sure what this reference is, but I meant to ask if you know anything about this.
No.
So I'm excited for DJ Shrike to be in the next 4 books.
Okay. Well, I mean, I've only read the first 2 books,
okay.
So maybe it's in the 3rd and 4th. I don't know.
So the second thing I want to do is that I have no idea how to even start talking about it. It's insanity. I just said I had 11 pages of notes after having read this. There's so much in this book.
Yeah.
So much. Please, aspiring writers, if you're by some accident listening to us, please take it to your heart and remember, sometimes less is more. Sometimes focusing a little bit can do wonders. So I have written a list of key phrases and genres and like concepts, and I want to just go through them super quickly. And what I want like you to do is to just say check if you think yes, this book is dead, or no, this is not this book.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So horror.
Yes.
Hard sci-fi.
Hard sci-fi. Check.
Religious philosophy.
Check.
Gore.
Check.
Porn.
No.
Literally the Terminator.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
The Matrix.
The Matrix. I would say check, but
yes.
I would say much more in the second book than in the first one.
Hard check.
Okay. All right.
Already insane.
I mean, I know what you're saying. That. Oh, okay. Yeah. Let's move forward.
Noir detective story.
Like very poorly done, but yeah, check.
Norse mythology.
Norse mythology. Because there is like Yggdrasil.
Yes.
No, it's just a name.
Cyberpunk.
Yeah, check, definitely. Yeah.
Magic flying carpet from Aladdin.
That's why I was laughing at hard sci-fi. Like it's like literally the opposite of hard sci-fi, but yeah, check.
AI hive mind.
Yeah, check.
Creating a computer god.
Check.
Conceiving a digital messiah without intercourse, maybe with intercourse.
Oh. Well, check, I guess.
Time travel.
Check.
Okay, I'm only halfway through this list. I'm gonna stop.
All right, yeah.
But as you can see, this book is insane. Why is there so much?
I mean, I'm pretty sure that a lot of these things you could say also about Dune.
Well, yes, but they're more
it is,
tied together.
yeah, it is true that it's much less focused on a topic.
I think this book is the reason why people who talk about my podcast are put off by it because it's too much sci-fi. And by that I mean many people I know that like books, they don't like sci-fi because of books like this.
Really?
Because I like this, but it's so nerdy and it's so messy and it's so much and there is so many concepts and it's almost for the novelty of the concept and mystical wondering about exploring the unknown than the actual story and the characters, that it's so hard for people who read detective stories or romance or something else to get into it because there's so much stuff, like so much. So I think I understand what people mean by they don't want sci-fi because they mention something like this, I think. Do you feel like that?
I mean, I'm not sure. I think most people who don't like sci-fi or fantasy, they don't like it because they just like more stories grounded in reality.
Exactly.
Like my father doesn't like sci-fi not because of the concepts or anything. He doesn't like sci-fi is because he likes like the real world.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, what you're saying makes sense. It can be off-putting for some people.
So that's just like a quick intro. What we're try to do, we usually talk a bit about our writer, what we thought about the book, and then go full on in spoilers. It's going to be a long episode, so strap in or stop listening later. You need to talk about all this in a lot of detail. Luckily or unfortunately for you listeners, you can decide, but you can also tune out or in anytime you like. So check the timestamps. I always put timestamps to the episode, so feel free to skip around. But as usual, did you like this? What's the general feeling about this book?
So something I told you when I started reading Hyperion and you asked me how it was, I had the feeling that like this guy, Dan Simmons, he wanted to write a book, but he didn't really want to write sci-fi. He wanted to write other stuff. For some reason, he decided to write a sci-fi book and then stuff all of the other things inside this book. It's just, I don't know. So, okay. Let me start again. What I want to say is this. So this is not the first Simmons book I've read.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah. So I also read the quadrilogy of Ilium and Olympus.
Yeah, I've heard about it.
Right. And I felt like it was very similar in terms of what I liked and didn't like. In the sense that, first, it's very polarizing. There are some ideas and concepts which I loved. I remember reading Ilium, especially towards the end. I just couldn't wait to read the second book. I was super excited.
Okay.
There were so many exciting things. But also there are some things regarding his writing style and regarding some of the ways he approaches certain topics. In general, like the way he structures the book. Like every page it becomes more annoying. And now that I've read 4 books written by him, so the 2 Ilium and Olympus, and then now Hyperion and Fall of Hyperion, I just can't take it anymore. I can't stand his writing style anymore. I can't stand some of the things he does and says in his books anymore. And I'm sorry. Like,
I've read 4 books by this guy. How do you feel? I can't take it anymore.
No, I mean, I would still recommend Ilium. I think it was an amazing book. I would still recommend, in a way, maybe also Hyperion. We can discuss about that. But reading these books so many times, it felt like, I don't know, I just wanted to punch him in the face. Or at least scream at him for a good 20 minutes. Because, I mean, like, no book is perfect. And even when I'm reading, like, books from other authors that I really like, sometimes I think, like, what is this? Why are you doing this? And, like, for example, as you might have heard on this podcast before, I read a lot of Brandon Sanderson books in the last year. Probably way too many. And at some point, like, I was kind of getting tired about certain things that he does a certain way and or like some of his weak points as a writer. But at the same time, I was always aware of the fact that this is just me having read a lot of books in a very short time. And if I had read only one, it would probably be fine. Like, I wouldn't even notice this, or I would notice it barely. For Dan Simmons books, this is in my face the whole time. Yeah. I will explain more about it
I
later,
understand how you feel, and I feel the same.
Okay, that's good.
For me, I liked a lot of parts, but some of it I disliked.
Okay.
And I think if it was shorter, I would have liked it much more.
Yeah, okay. So would you recommend this
Yes,
book?
that's a very hard question.
Okay.
So, probably not.
All right. I would start by saying I was recommended this book for a long time by a person I have a really high estimate about. I think she really likes good books, and for this one, I honestly don't understand why she likes it so much.
I was thinking about this because my coworker who might be listening, he let it as his childhood most beloved series.
Okay.
So I think it might be because it's a book that you read very early in your life, and it was like a new amazing world of wonder.
Yeah.
And you haven't had that kind of experience yet. It's kind of an epic thing. So
that
might
could be. Like, some of the things that bother me now probably wouldn't bother me as a
That's
teenager.
what I mean exactly. Yes.
Some of them definitely would have bothered me a lot. I'm absolutely sure. But
Yes.
overall, I would say I would recommend it to certain people. Of course, you can say that about every book, but like for this one, I would be very selective.
Yes. So like for me, I would recommend it to myself because this is the kind of thing I like. I kind of yes.
Really?
Unfortunately.
It doesn't sound like it.
Okay, the idea of this book is what I like.
Okay.
But the thing that it actually is, I disliked. But okay. I wanted to say, so we didn't say that this book is basically six stories.
Okay, yeah, so this book is inspired by the Canterbury Tales. Essentially, this was a collection of stories of pilgrims who were traveling to Canterbury. It was like one of the holy places in England in the Middle Ages, and so people would travel there and, they would stop by an inn before getting to Canterbury, and to spend the time they would tell stories to each other, and these are the Canterbury Tales. In general, about that kind of structure, which is a really cool idea, and it's both like in the structure and in the plot, because in the plot also there are pilgrims traveling to a place, so that's cool.
Yeah, I like the concept, but the execution,
the actual stories.
The actual stories I actually also liked, kind of.
Oh, really? Okay.
Like the stories are too long for a short story and too short for a book.
Okay,
so
that's interesting.
It dragged. Like, it always got me very interested, and then a lot of unnecessary stuff happened. So much unnecessary stuff. So much. So much. Like, we both agree the first story we like the best, and I think the reason is simply it's the most focused.
Yeah.
Because something happened and you actually explored that thing and it ended and it was fine. If all the stories were like that, it would be a great book. But the other stories, they're always like, oh, this thing, oh, and that thing, oh, and also this thing, and then let's do this and that. And it's like completely like a new universe is built up from this short story.
I mean, I think that was part of
back.
So I think one of the reasons why so many people like this book is, there are these 6 stories and each of them is presented in a very different way. So the first one, for example, is like, reading from a diary. The last one is kind of like diary entries, but it's kind of like a sequence of monologues by a person
like
in
audio recordings.
Yeah, audio recordings, taken at different decades. Another one is written kind of like an action story. One, as you said, is kind of like a noir, kind of like detective story. Yeah.
It's like, what the hell happened?
No, I mean, I'm fine with that. I think that's cool. It's cool that it tried to use different stories, and it's cool also the fact that other than the first story, which is kind of like on its own and doesn't really connect to anything, the other stories all kind of like mesh together, and you start to understand the bigger picture by hearing all of the different stories and seeing the connections between them and seeing how certain elements can find an explanation in another person's story. That's pretty cool. I do really like that.
I like that idea. Yes.
Yeah. On the other hand, my problem was there wasn't like a unifying style or unifying theme to the whole book. Some of the stories, they felt like they were just there and like it didn't really feel like sci-fi anymore.
Exactly.
Like the fourth story, the scholar story, that has nothing of a sci-fi story.
Yes.
Like basically nothing.
It's like an exercise in writing.
Yeah, exactly. It felt like an exercise in writing.
And I have to segue into talking a little bit about the writer, which I have only one thing to say about the writer. I am afraid, I'm sorry, Dan Simmons, if you're listening, or whoever, I think you're a little bit egoistic and too full of yourself. I can't...
So I have many things about to say about Dan Simmons, but...
it's like he wanted to show he can write all genres in one book, and he can do everything in all the ways possible, from a porn scene to an action scene to a drama, love story, everything, and including poetry, which I didn't list on this list in the beginning. Technobabble poetry is what this is sometimes.
So, okay, I completely agree with you. Like, it feels like an exercise in writing and a way to show off. That could still be okay. My main issue with, like, I have many issues with him. I don't know if this is the right time to talk about them.
You can.
But, okay. So,
let's talk about the writer. So, he's from the US, writes sci-fi and horror the most time, and now he's 75 years old, and he's written 30 plus books. He's won some awards. He used to be an elementary school teacher.
Yeah.
And that's about it. I listened to an interview with him, and he has this guy called Richard Curtis, who is his biggest fan, he says himself, and he's his publisher, agent, whoever, so he does all his like events and stuff. And it doesn't seem like this relationship is very healthy. I was listening to, like, there was a host of like the interview, there was this guy who's the agent, and then there was the writer. And the writer constantly was like, oh, let me tell you how I did this, and let me tell you about myself, and let me tell you how I did that, and also let me tell you how I did this well. And then the guy who's the agent was like, oh, and tell us more about how you did that well. And the host was trying to like steer the conversation into some topic that's a conversation, and the agent was like, oh, well, let the guy finish, let us hear more about your adventures. I was like, so this guy, he writes well, he has good ideas, but he's got this other guy who thinks that Dan Simmons can do nothing wrong. And I don't think there's anybody around Dan Simmons who can tell him any critique, seems like, almost.
That could be.
And this is how it looks after that, because he's just, okay, I'm gonna be a poet now, and I'm the best poet in the world. And also, I can't speak, and I swear, but I'm still a good poet. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What's happening?
Yeah. No, okay, I would say this. I have never seen an interview or read about him too much, honestly. So this is just what comes across after having read 4 of his books. The first one is, as you said, he comes across as very full of himself and being like, oh, I'm gonna put poetry into this book. Okay, can I pause here for a second? I
was waiting for this moment.
Okay, I hate poetry. I hate poetry.
This is a long time coming.
Yes, I really hate it. I know some people love it, some people think it's good, some people understand it. That's great. All the power to you. I don't mind that at all. I can be okay if, medieval saga, and so there are some parts which are in verse, that's fine. The random verses of poetry for no reason, and the whole exaltation of poetry in this book is just so irritating. And
I'm not good at poetry. I don't understand poetry either. But I dare to say this poetry is not very good, is it?
I don't know. I don't care. It could be the best. I honestly don't care. It's just like, you don't need to keep saying, oh, how good poetry is, and how somehow like poetry book, it becomes an absolute bestseller or something like that. Like, no.
I have to make a reference to our previous episode.
Yeah.
On the Free Body episode, we were laughing how the writer wrote stories within the book, and it was like, I'd like to let you know that these stories are pretty good. And giving a medal to himself.
I know you say that.
And then in the sequel, like fan fiction sequel, book 4 of the one of the characters becomes the writer himself and whatever. So I was sure in this story, at the end of the story, the poet himself will say, oh, I'd like to let you know that these poems won awards, and it's pretty good. And I am horrified that at the end of this 4-book series, it's gonna turn out that the poet is the writer himself. And we've been reading his books the whole time.
I don't think so. We can talk about the poet later when we talk about spoilers.
Yeah.
But no, the other thing that really bothers me, I don't know, this might be controversial or whatever, I don't care. He is the type of Western person who thinks that basically the whole world and the whole of humanity revolves around Western culture and white people.
Yes. Yes, that's also a very good point.
Okay, let me explain what I mean by that. So, first, the whole book says several times that everyone speaks English. Like, English has become like the language of humanity in the 29th century. And there's the whole like 80s thing where it's basically, despite the fact that this takes place like again in the 29th century and on a lot of different words, basically this whole empire is modeled after the United States, and most of the words are modeled around the United States. And this is one of the reasons why I hated the Scholar's story so much. But again, we'll talk about that later. But besides that, every time he talks about literature, and he talks about literature a lot, he's always talking about British and American literature the whole time.
Yes.
Like, we are in the 29th century and they keep talking about Keats. Like, Keats is such an important person in this book and in the next one. Like, the second book is literally dedicated to Keats.
Oh no.
Which is fine, like, whatever. Okay, you want to dedicate it to him. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. You think he's the best poet ever? Again, fine. I don't care. Like, I have nothing against that. But it's really hard to believe that, this poet, every time they talk about poetry and literature in the 29th century, they only talk about Western literature. Like, Eastern literature basically doesn't exist. Nothing else exists.
This is again the same point. Like, he loves that, so he talks only about the things
exactly.
he sees. There is no global point of view, no bigger picture,
Exactly.
nothing like that.
They would not reference like an author or a politician. Like, they keep making references to Lincoln and Churchill. I'm sure those are important historical figures and they will stay important like even 1,000 years from now. But you want to tell me that, they're comparing this person to Lincoln? Only Lincoln. Like, there was no one after that in 800 years who she's comparable to. Like, are you serious? And this also leads to the fact that, because again, this is a book written in the 80s, so I'm willing to give it a little bit of a leeway, but it also makes me happy that we've made a lot of progress in that sense. Basically, this is a book, another one of those books where women are just like, women.
That was
like, and you could say, but the president of the galaxy is a woman. Yeah, she's a woman. Does she ever do or say anything like that makes her even remotely think like a woman?
He's already writing a comment about Lamia and the detective is a woman and all this. Yeah. But it's just one character and it could as well be a man. There is nothing womanly about her at all.
Exactly. Nothing.
She's not a woman.
Yeah. The only things that there are about her about a woman are like super stereotypical, like, this guy is really hot.
And that was we got to talk about that. I was so mad. Yeah. But anyway, the only reason she's a woman is that she has to get pregnant.
Yes. That's so true. And also because she could have sex with Keats, which is all he wanted to do.
Oh my god.
They're only men for 800 years.
Let's talk about the characters a little bit. Yeah. Have the characters made you feel anything during the whole book?
I liked the colonel. I think he was a kind of a good character. Yeah, I liked him. I think it was kind of unique.
There are good characters and all this. Okay, but did you feel anything?
Yeah. I felt something when it was about him.
Okay. I didn't.
That's fine.
About any emotions, like in this whole book, I had no emotional attachment to any of the characters. The only slightly, emotion-wise feeling was the scholar story. When the girl, but I couldn't care less. That's the only part where I kind of could have felt something, but I didn't even care. And all the other characters, I was like amused that they're dying in a horror scenario, amused that they're fighting, everybody's dying, or bemused by the insanity of this context of what's happening. I never grew attached to any of those characters at all.
I like the colonel and a little bit the consul. I think the problem with the consul is that his story was not really his story.
Yes.
And like the part of the story about him was really short and not really explored.
Yes.
And do you know why? because like his story was actually a short story that he published 6 years before publishing Hyperion.
Oh,
and he
I
just
see.
like copy pasted it into the book.
No.
Yeah, like there was this story called Remembering Siri, which was a standalone story, and then he just copy pasted it into the book, which is fine. Like I have nothing against that, but that's why like it wasn't really about the character. It was just about something kind of different.
So this book did make me feel like a very strong sense of wonder and constantly wanting to know more.
Yeah.
And being very curious about all the world building and the lore. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, it has like some really good ideas, and one thing that maybe some people didn't like, which I think it's one of the things he does best, is how he tackles certain philosophical elements of it. What is God? What is the role of humanity? Humanity being afraid of other intelligent species. What the destruction of Earth might mean for humans, like the psychological effect that might have.
Very good.
Yeah,
things
those
in
are all
this
very
book.
interesting. Yeah. And then, I think the thing everyone likes is the Shrike.
Yeah, I have to give it to him for the concepts that are good and the ideas that are well described and explored are not overstaying its welcome and not being, like we said, he's full of himself. So I was 100% sure that like the Shrike and all these ideas will be like super on the nose and like just hard on it and like repeating it. No, there's this being, the Shrike. And you would expect it to be almost exploited for the purpose of showing how well you can write about it. Yeah. But it's not, and it's very not subtle, but it's like the right amount of it in the book. And that's great. So he did that well. I have to give it to him. Like some of the things work really well, but a lot of the other things are too dragged out and overstay its welcome are not necessary. And So I think by now, I think you know what we feel about this book.
Yeah.
So before we move on to the spoilers, I just wanted to say that I'm very conflicted. I still don't know if I hate this or not. I am very annoyed about the ending.
I was so curious to hear.
I was so mad because I was reading this and I think I would recommend this if you read it and then took like long breaks in between the stories. Like read this as if all the stories were different books and then somehow they came together. Because the connecting tissue in between them is so far in between and so non-existent that it almost doesn't matter to me.
I don't think... I think some of the stories connect to the others more than...
That's true.
Than some others, but I guess.
They connect in the sense of giving more background to it, not directly elaborating on the story.
I mean, the console story explains a lot of things about the other ones.
The last one, yes. And then finally things are about to happen or something's gonna go down and then the book just ends and it ends on such a nonsensical note. I hate the ending so much.
Yeah. I mean, like, okay. One final thing I want to say, of course we're not spoiling the ending yet, but it's clear that when he was writing the ending, he had already decided he wanted to write a next book. Essentially, he decided, you know what, I'm not going to give an ending to this book so that people are forced to buy the next one. That's the only thing I can think of.
But not the biggest damn cliffhanger, clickbait, nonsensical...
It's not even a cliffhanger, because like a cliffhanger is like when... I mean, as the name suggests, like you're on the verge of like a big event happening. In that case, there isn't any big event about to happen. It's just you're before the big event happened.
Okay. Yeah. So, needless to say, we were not happy about the ending. Yeah. And I wanted to do something which I think doesn't make any more sense because we already established that you're not reading any more of this.
Sorry.
But I wanted to say I've written another list of questions. And I wanted to do that if you answer yes to these questions answered in the sequel, I'm going to read the sequel.
Okay.
But I probably shouldn't read it because I also wrote down, if I do that, you have to read the third one, but you will never.
I can do it. I'm okay. All right. I can do it. I don't mind.
If I read the second one, I feel like we should keep going, but I also feel like we've already kind of decided we're not reading the second one, or I shouldn't read the second one. So we'll see. But before we go into the spoilers, is there anything you can say for the listeners who are curious and might be deciding if they're getting into the series, if they want to read the first book. Maybe they've read the first book and they're curious if they're going to read the second book. What can you tell them to make a better decision about the second book?
The second book.
Can you recommend it? Do you think people should go on? Do you think they should stop here? And why not?
I mean,
why yes. Something I do know is that the sequel is not short stories. And is that a good thing or not? Is my question.
The second is basically like a normal book. I would say read the second book if you want to see an ending to the story of the characters and like the main plot line of the first book. Do not expect complete and clear answers about many of the things you want to know.
Did you like it better than the first one?
The second book? No.
Very much no. I heard Paulo reply to this question many times, and that's a hard no. The second book.
All things considered, the second book it has way too much nonsense.
Needless to say, I'm not motivated very much to read the second book, even though I do want to know all these answers. So we'll see. But let's go to the spoilers. If you want to read this, I think you kind of hopefully got an idea what this is. We're gonna get into all this nonsense. This is like our therapy session. We have to talk about these stories. So yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so spoilers. What I'm going to try to do is to give you some background about the world, and then I'm gonna sum up as shortly as possible each of the stories, and then inevitably nonsensical discussions will ensue. And inevitably, Paulo's gonna be like, oh, you skipped this important part. So the book started with the prologue. There's this guy called the Consul. We never have his name.
His name is Marion.
Oh.
We have his first name. We don't have his last name.
Oh, I completely miss his name.
I mean, it's not like it's almost never called by his first name, but yeah.
And what happens in this book is that a lot of things are just mentioned and thrown at you, and many of them kind of make sense. None of them are elaborated on, and a lot of them are expected to just be there. And it sounds like poetic technobabble is what I would describe this. So he just goes home and he gets this message from the hegemony, and an example is that he thinks about like the universe and something, and then he lies down on his bed naked while outside there is a storm and there is lightning hitting some tree, and he starts listening to the Flight of the Valkyries by Wagner, and he thinks to himself, oh, Wagner is the only good music you can listen to during a thunderstorm. And then he's like lying there naked and listening. What?
I mean, I even forgot that part. Like, I don't think that's the important part.
Of course not, but this is like an example that happens in this book. You're like reading it and it's kind of good, and this kind of stuff happening. And
this is like, in the fourth book of the Three-Body Problem, where you were so impressed by him getting like big pecs.
Yes. Why? Who cares? It's like I was many times in this book I was reading it and I was just like, what? Just like completely didn't have any words to even react.
He's like on this planet and he's the only person on this planet. He's kind of like in exile.
Yes. So he gets this message about Hyperion from the hegemony, and Hyperion is a planet. We never said that.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to go to this planet because reasons. And there are so many reasons and so many things are going on. And after this prologue, I was like, what? And then after all this was dumped on me, he lay naked and he was like listening to Wagner. I was like, what is happening?
Who cares?
I know, who cares? But why is this in this book? Like, good books and good storytelling in a way that's cohesive and has a good payoff. Details, the devil is in the details. Like the details are the good things. Like imagine our discussion about Dune and stuff. We love the details because they have a meaning.
That's true.
And they pay off. And then there is depth to the context because the details make sense.
It's a very good point.
What does this do other than make me like, what?
So many times, especially at the beginning of the book, but even later, I think he just wants to put details for his own satisfaction. Like he wanted to say this thing about Flight of the Valkyries, even though it didn't really have that much meaning. Of course, like someone in the 29th century is playing the piano and playing Rachmaninoffs. Like that's completely normal, right? Like, Of course, we are still playing music from 800 years ago.
So, yes. Okay, and no more comments on those things. So there are a bunch of terms and like things completely dumped on you. So there is this this planet Hyperion, and there is this mystical being called the Shrike.
Yeah.
And there is this religion around it, and there are all these religious zealots, and there is something called a time tomb, and it's going to open.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Nobody knows. There is this Ouster fleet, and it's going to attack Hyperion. And who are the Ousters? Nobody knows. And why are they going to nobody else? And then there is this World Web, and the World Web is some kind of network, and is it just like internet, or is it actual planets? Nobody knows. And then there is the Outback planet. Is the Outback planet Hyperion? Are there more than one Outback planet? We don't know yet. And then there is the Farcaster, which is like a special way to travel. And then there is the Flatline, which is a special way to communicate. And none of these things are kind of relevant. And then there is the Yggdrasil, which is a tree, and it's also
By
a
the way,
spaceship.
it's also funny because every time there is a like fat line, it squirts.
Yeah.
Which I like. Yeah, it was kind of funny. I don't know. I'm stupid, but
So
please go ahead.
So yeah, all this is like dumped on you, and I was like, what? Okay. So all these things will be explained, but also a million other things like this will be just thrown at you.
Yeah, I remember like reading the first 10 pages and thinking like, Philip is going to hate me.
And I did. No, not really. Not really. I'm always trying to give it a chance. Even as much as I dislike poetry, I'm still trying to see something in it. I'm going to give it a fair chance. That's why we're doing this podcast.
Yeah.
So I didn't hate it at this point.
Yeah, but no, I completely agree. I think he throws a lot of names and stuff. I honestly don't mind. I know that some people don't like it, such as yourself. That's also okay. It can be hard to just get all of these names thrown at you all of a sudden. I think Dune does a kind of a bad job in that sense too.
That's true.
A book that does a very good job is Mistborn.
And the whole Ender Saga, I dare to argue.
Okay. I see.
But the console is supposed to go to Hyperion because there is going to be a war maybe with the Ousters, and the time tombs also at Hyperion are open.
Yeah.
And there is this whole religion of the Shrike, who is described like a creature that communicates only through death
And pain.
and pain.
He's the avatar of pain.
Avatar of pain.
Yeah. Yeah, he has to go on a pilgrimage.
So there are 7 people on this pilgrimage, and each of them has a very strong reason why to go to Hyperion.
Yeah.
And each of them, not each of them, almost all of them just lounge around and they just tell a story.
Yeah, okay. But before that, so when the council receives the message to go to Hyperion, that he has to go to Hyperion, first the council said he was the former council. The reason why he's a council is that he was the council of Hyperion. So he was the kind of ruler of Hyperion before his exile.
Okay.
And the CEO of the hegemony, like the kind of like the president of the hegemony, Maida Gladstone, tells him that one person among the 7 is a traitor. And the consul says, wow, she has to tell me and take the risk that I am the traitor. You know, from the beginning, this was kind of intriguing, I have to say. Like, you as a reader know that there is a traitor. You don't know who it is. It might be the consul himself. Most of the plot outside of the story is told by the pilgrims. Most of the plot is told by the perspective of the consul. So you're inclined to think that it's not a consul because, again, you see his perspective, but you don't really see the others' perspectives. Yeah, that's kind of intriguing.
Yeah, and when it's revealed, I was couldn't care less.
Yeah, I agree. Because at that point it didn't matter. But yeah.
All this build up and all this intrigue, and it was.
But at the beginning it was pretty intriguing. I would say this.
Okay. So before we start with those individual stories, I have to ask you a very serious question.
Yeah.
Paulo, is the Shrike General Grievous?
More than General Grievous, I always thought it's more like... Well, I guess I understand why you say it's General Grievous. A few times I thought it as well, because of the 4 arms, right? Yeah, that's true.
I thought it would make you laugh, so
yeah.
too bad. Not a good joke.
No, but... yeah, but I get it.
Okay, just funny. You'll get a laugh out of you. So, the first story is told by Father Linar Hoyt, who's a priest.
Yeah.
And now, I don't want to even talk about this, but already I'm like, what? He's the priest of the Roman Catholic Church?
Yeah, he's like Catholic priest.
So how is this related to the Shrike priests? Whatever. I don't even want to know.
There is no really...
I don't even want to know.
No connection at all.
So
I mean, the pilgrims were chosen by the Church of the Shrike and the government. So it's not like it was really their choice. I mean, they accepted, but they were chosen by them.
Okay.
Also, one thing that we forgot to say is that usually the Church of the Shrike, like this is kind of like the rumor, is that when there is a pilgrimage, 7 people go on this pilgrimage. It has to be 7. They can't go by ship because the ship will land unmanned, and everyone on the ship will disappear. And all of the 7 pilgrims will die, but one of them will get their wish granted. The Shrike will grant one wish. Now, is this true? Is this fake?
I like this part.
Yeah, no one knows. Yeah, I also like this part. You know what I would have liked? If this had like any impact on the rest of the story, since basically it's kind of forgotten even in the second book.
Oh no, that was one of my questions. You should have said yes to read the sequel. Already minus points.
Yeah.
But they say it, there is like a plot point at the very end, and they are like, oh, we're 7, or we're 6, or we're 8, and there is a child, and does it count? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean anything either. Okay.
Yeah.
So, it's like even the writer himself was too overwhelmed by his own ego.
Yeah.
Because there are all these things that if there were less of them and they were more detailed and more in depth and they were all tied more together, it would have worked really well. But he had to put all these things in there so hard and so much that there wasn't even space in his head to wrap it up.
That's true.
It's like, okay. So I'm gonna... So the first story I like very much. So there is this Father Hoyt, and he is an apprentice of Father Duray.
Yeah, I think it's Duray, Paul Duray.
Duray has to go to Hyperion because of some discovery, paleontological discovery.
No, okay. Duray has been kind of exiled by the church because the problem is that the Catholic Church has been basically losing followers throughout the centuries, and now it's almost insignificant. So in an attempt to essentially regain the faith of the people, Father Duray went to a planet called Armagast, which is one of the 9 planets which has labyrinths under its surface. And he was an archaeologist other than a priest, and he had a fake discovery. Like he pretended he had found some artifacts showing signs of the Christian religion on Armagast preceding the arrival of the humans on that planet. So that it's kind of like to say that Christian religion is something that existed regardless of humanity, and so it's a real religion. This was a fake. People in the church understood that he was trying to fabricate some evidence. They got mad and they exiled him. So he decided to go to Hyperion because he wanted to speak with the Bikura.
So this part I also liked, and this is another example, like, okay, it's very interesting, I like this, and hopefully it's gonna be important later. No. And it's like you play an RPG game and there are so many side quests that at the beginning you kind of like the side quests, and halfway through like, I don't want any more side quests.
Yeah.
So the first half or quarter I was very much into all these side things, and then at the end I was just like, stop it, just get to the point.
Well,
that's my biggest problem with this book.
I like, again, the stories. It's just that the stories themselves were not good. Not that like the structure of the book was a problem. Like, so for this first story, the reason why I think it was good is, again, I don't think this has basically any connection with anything else. I mean, from what I read, it's really, really important for the third and fourth book. But for the first and second book, it's basically irrelevant. But it is really cool because it's kind of like this really creepy horror story.
Yes.
And it's written really well. I really like the style, of the diary. Gets darker and darker. The beginning is just kind of like him being annoyed by the countryside people, essentially. And then like he gets a fever and he has like these erotic dreams and delirium about this woman from the farm. And then, he gets to the Bikura and there's like this small adventure where they have to get through the...
So the Bikura are people, like a tribe that are very strange, very lethargic, very dumb.
At the beginning he didn't know. So the Bikura are the descendants of the people who had first landed on Hyperion, who had basically who crashed on Hyperion, and they landed in a very isolated place, and basically for 400 years they lived completely isolated from the rest of the planet.
So he wants to study them just because he wants to study them?
I mean, he wants to exile himself, and so because he's kind of an intellectual, he's like, at least I'll do something interesting.
This was like the same feeling many parts of this book, because I was trying to take these side things and somehow graft them onto this thing. I was like, how is this connected? No, it's not connected.
Yeah.
So he just wants to go there.
Yeah.
And then the Bikura are very strange.
Yeah.
They talk weird. They have this translator, and he leaks their language. Then they see him naked and they freak out.
Yeah.
And then they have this secret place that they can't let other people go to. And he has a guide who helps him, but they murder the guide, like very graphically.
Yeah.
And then he sneaks in the secret place and he finds like a amazing church, chapel kind of thing.
Yeah, it looks like a church,
Yeah. And stuff goes down, and what goes down is that the Bikura want to murder him too, because he's not...
Of the cruciform.
Yes. And he doesn't know what it means, and he argues with them, and he thinks it means that he's a person of religion or something, but doesn't mean it at all. So finally he convinces them to not kill him, but to take him in the church and not baptize him, but cruciformize him.
Well, no, they take him they take him down the cliff. Actually, not to the church, but even like further down to the labyrinth. Hyperion is one of the planets which has a labyrinth, which are these gigantic caves dug like millions of years before, and no one knows who or how or why they have been dug. And when he's there, the Shrike appears, and there's like this place with all of these like pink, fleshy crosses. The Shrike puts one of these things around his neck, kind of like a necklace, and then this thing basically becomes one with his body.
Yes, it like grafts onto him, and he has these medical devices, so he tries to examine it, and he sees it metastasized into his body, and he can't get rid of it. We also get like a quick description of the Shrike, which is super cool.
Yeah.
He's like a metallic creature with 4 arms, moves like almost teleports because it's so fast. Like people can't see him moving, then he disappears and appears out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Just cuts up people into pieces.
Yeah.
So then the story progresses, and he notices that if they keep talking about the true death and just death. So if the Bikura die, they carry the dead body into the church, and the Shrike or the
cruciform.
The cruciform regenerates the whole body.
Yeah. Yeah, essentially the cruciform is a parasite which resuscitates the host. It's just that every time they are resuscitated, they become dumber and dumber, which is why like after 400 years of resurrections, they have become smaller and they have become really dumb, and they can't really understand anything anymore, and also don't have genitalia anymore.
No children.
Yeah, because they lost the need for children.
And they always have to be 70 of them.
Yeah.
Which I also hoped would be some kind of point, but no.
No, there's no point. Yeah.
So the guy keeps getting more and more worried, and he tries to scratch out this cross of his chest, and he cannot do it. And then he tries to leave the village, but the farther he leaves, the more painful it gets, because the parasite doesn't want to let him go.
Yeah.
And then it ends in the most graphic, like excruciatingly painful way.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they find him that he self-crucified himself on top of this Tesla tree.
Yeah.
Which a Tesla tree is just like a
tree which explodes.
Yeah, what the hell? It's like this Tesla generator, what do you call those? Like the ball that shoots lightning out, I imagine, or something?
Yeah, like it accumulates like static electricity, and then it releases like electric pole or something.
And not only are those Tesla trees there, but there are fire forests, which are just trees of fire.
Yeah, no, it's because there are Tesla trees, so it's constantly burning.
So this is already like a lot to imagine. Like, like what's happening there?
Yeah.
And then he climbs on top of this Tesla tree and just drives just wires and like sticks, I don't even know what he used,
sticks
through his limbs, so he would stay there crucified. And he keeps talking about religion and how the pain will free him, and he will become pure if he really believes in God and stuff like that. So he just keeps dying and regenerating for I don't know how long until they find him.
Yeah, for I think it's 7 years. Yeah, because Leinar Hoyt had come back to Pacem, which was the planet of the Catholic Church, and then he had gone back, but it takes because Hyperion is not connected to the Farcaster web, they have to travel the space and it takes 8 years. Yeah, that was really cool. Like he is like in this endless cycle of like death and resurrection.
Mm-hmm. So cut back to the pilgrims, and they find that Father Hoyt, who told the story, also has the crucifix.
As a cruciform.
Cruciform.
Yeah. Actually, he has 2 of them.
Mm-hmm. On his back and on his chest.
Yeah.
And the reason he can withstand the pain being away from the church, whatever Hyperion place,
from Hyperion,
is that he's constantly on drugs.
He takes ultramorphine. Which is kind of a dumb name, but okay, whatever.
Yeah, so these things I kind of let go.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then I always like, why is he naked? And you let those things go. So this is our, you always notice this. I was sure you would say that. So the consul or somebody takes his drugs, and because he doesn't want to tell the full story. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't want to reveal that he has this cruciform and stuff. So the consul kind of tortures him without his painkillers until he tells him everything, and then he gives him the painkillers and he passes out. Yeah. So it kind of tied it back to the pilgrims. I'm very happy at this point with the book, very much into it. Always great. So what is Father Hoyt even gonna do when he gets there?
On Hyperion?
Yes.
Well, I mean, like, he wants to ask the Shrike to die the true death.
Which Father Duray did die his true death.
Yeah, because of the pain, the cruciform detached from his body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, so he finally died. Okay.
Yes.
So then there is like an interlope where people just talk a little bit, which, by the way, I found hilarious. Stuff goes down. Oh, let's just listen and talk to like the other guy who tells the story. Yeah. Doesn't seem appropriate at all at the time.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
But okay.
Here, they land on Hyperion, and then there are a few scenes which are kind of relevant. Like they go to they meet with the Governor General of the planet, who was the consul's aide, and then they go to this restaurant / inn where the consul used to get drunk every night, and
it's like okay, but it's all irrelevant, and okay. Second tale is by the soldier Kassad.
The colonel.
The colonel, Kassad, who's your favorite character?
Yeah, I would say Kassad is my favorite character, yes.
I was very amused by the story. Yeah. I was like, what is this book?
I mean, this one is a classic 80s action movie
After the horror part, I was very surprised this was in the book. So we start in a virtual simulation. Yeah. Where Kassad is training for the Force, which is an abbreviation FORC of something, whatever. He wants to be a super soldier colonel.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the army of the hegemony is called Force, and then there is Force Ground, Force Space, Force Sea, and so on.
So he is in a simulation, but he can die.
It's not clear. He said that technically you don't die. If you die in the simulation, you don't necessarily die in real life, but sometimes there are accidents where the brain gets so damaged if you die in the simulation that you actually die in real life.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So he butchers like a lot of people. There's blood and guts on the floor.
He's fighting in the Battle of Agincourt, which
is like a medieval battle with swords.
You don't know about the Battle of Agincourt?
Yeah, I'm just saying, it's a medieval battle with armor and swords. Yeah. Guts on the floor. Everybody's messed up. What a better time to... A woman appears.
Yeah, well, okay. So he's about to get murdered because he's kind of like in a rush of adrenaline. He's trying to pursue an enemy. And he gets isolated in a forest. The guy turns around and all of a sudden he realizes that, the other guy is better equipped. Mm-hmm. And might actually win the fight. He's like, I'm kind of fucked. And then, this woman comes out of nowhere, kills the guy, and or helps him kill the guy. I forgot.
Yeah, and he's fucked in a different way than he expected.
Yeah, and then, basically, like, next to the still warm body of this guy. They
bleeding out, like, guts. Like,
they have wild sex.
And they, like, roll around in the limbs and the fallen bodies, and they, like, smear blood all over each other. What the hell?
Sure.
I was like, okay, sci-fi horror, religious zealots, mysticism, cut to medieval gore and having a porn scene in the gore. What happened?
it's fair.
So this woman doesn't even tell him her name.
No.
She appears out of nowhere. Is she a ghost of the machine? Did she sleep with the simulation AI? Whatever, we don't know.
Yeah, it's not clear. Like, he tries to find out anything about this person. He can't find anything. Like, he can't find if... Yeah. Because according to the records, there was no one like her who had joined the simulation. And because he keeps seeing her also in the following simulations, clearly she was not part of the first simulation.
And in his dreams also.
Yeah. Or just in his dreams. But they keep having sex, like, on different battlefields across the ages.
So much sex. And not like, they had sex. Like, nipples were here, blood was there, and this is what squished. That kind of sex. Like, what? Okay. I was very amused. So cut to him going to a real battle this time, fighting the ousters we talked about. So he goes into this battle with the ousters. They are attacking a planet, and he's leading a defense force to stop the ousters destroying the planet. Shit goes down, and this battle escalates into just...
Yeah, like
so much.
all-out war, and the ousters are just like, yeah, we don't care. Let's destroy everything. Let's fuck everyone. And if we have to kill a lot of civilians for that, well, too bad for them.
This felt almost like a Marvel movie, like end movie battle. You go from strategizing to small battles to bigger battles to stealing warships, spaceships, explosions, more explosions, then crashing the planet, battle on the planet.
You're confusing things, I think.
I'm just exaggerating.
So for this battle, we have, like, for this war, we have almost no details. It just says that...
Okay, so then there's more battles, but it's like... okay, yes.
So this is the war for Brescia, which, I mean, it starts and ends.
Okay, I mashed together all the battles, but there's just battle and battle and battle and battle. And so basically from this point on, it felt to me like there was just more and more battle.
Yeah, well, I mean, after this, he gets assassinated at the end of this war, but they managed to save him with future technology, whatever. But anyway, he wakes up on this hospital ship near Hyperion. And immediately after he wakes up, there is like this...
like a video game.
Yeah, they attack... Yeah, this was really literally like a video game. It's like, you wake up and it's like, next goal, survive.
Shoot.
Yeah.
More weapon, ship.
Yeah.
Spaceship.
And, I mean, this was cool. It was also completely nonsensical in the fact that they wanted to kill him. All right. Why did they not just blow the ship up? Like, it seems fairly easy. Like, the ship was already destroyed. Also, how come, like, everyone died and he was the only one who survived?
Yes.
Like,
nonsense.
How did it happen? But again, like, if you watch, like, 80s action movies, this is what happens every time, right?
Yes.
So, that's fine. I'm okay with it.
It wasn't horrible, but it was kind of bad. And it felt like the kind of sci-fi schlock I read all the time. And it was... something. So squid spaceships with tentacles and tails and all this, so much. And then he goes on the planet of Hyperion.
Yeah, he escapes onto Hyperion.
And they crash next to the Poet City, next to the time tubes.
Yeah.
And the woman appears.
Yes, so she saves him.
And the Shrike appears.
First they have sex again.
No, of course.
Because that's the important part. Yeah, and I think she tells him her name, like Moneta.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then they like join in with the Shrike with murdering each other.
Yeah, they are joined by the Shrike to murder the ousters. And they murder the ousters. He gets super high tech, like basically latex.
They get a superpower armor.
Superpower armor, which basically makes him look as if he was naked. And the Shrike is like stopping time, so essentially they're like murdering all of the ousters.
This was insane.
Super easily.
I was like, what? They stop time, he's naked in silver suits, he's just had sex, there's blood all over him, he's got the like...
Yeah. And they kill all of the ousters super easily because...
murder. Yeah. Like murder spree.
Yeah. And then, of course, he has sex with Moneta again. But... I'll leave that to you. Because yesterday you sent me a message asking me, or a few days ago, asking something very specific.
I was starting with this story when they had sex in blood the first time. I was like, if she's going to be the Shrike, I'm going to throw my book out of the window. So they keep having sex and she starts to be transformed into what only can be described as spiky Terminator with teeth for blades.
Yeah,
blades
which
for
is the
teeth.
Shrike.
So she starts becoming the Shrike, but then she's not the Shrike. Let's have more sex.
Yeah.
And she morphs back in, but the Shrike is like running around murdering, or it's not there anymore. We don't know. So is she the Shrike? Oh my god. This is like how more of a sci-fi trash story this could have become. I can't imagine anything more trashy than what just happened in this story.
I mean, this is kind of like for the sake of just, having a shocking moment. It was pretty well done, I would say this. The feeling you're having sex with this woman and then she becomes a Shrike.
Also, they described like it looked like she was being impaled from her chest, and there was like a protrusion from her chest, like a super spike that was going to impale him too. And I thought that first I thought the Shrike killed her while they were having sex. And this also happens in other stories, by the way. Again, somebody's having sex and they get impaled by the Shrike and stuff. And I was like, is this like a fetish thing? Is like having your partner murdered and cut open while you have sex with them a thing now?
I don't know. But I would say this, like, I think Moneta at this point also explains that she is basically traveling back in time.
Yes.
So the Moneta Kassad has met is a younger Moneta than the one he had met when he was younger.
Oh my God.
She's going back in time because the time tombs are traveling back in time. Anyway, this is what happens.
At this point in the book, I was like, I'm done with this. It was just 2 stories in, I was already fed up. I was just like, this was fun, but not really, and what?
I mean, I was still thinking, it's okay, I'm still curious about the next stories.
I was a little bit in, but after the next story, I was very much out.
Yes. Okay, so, shall we talk about the next story?
Please go ahead.
Okay. So the next story is Dan Simmons trying to basically use all the stereotypes about rock stars in the 80s and put them on poets to show that poets can also be cool, and basically just take revenge on all of the editors and stuff like that. So,
oh my God.
To explain, this is the story of the poet Martin Silenus.
This part I was suffering.
And essentially is this guy who was born like on Earth, like old Earth, before it got destroyed by a black hole.
Okay. No more comments.
That's okay. Like that actually is fine. But anyway, he was born there, and then he was growing up to be a poet. He wanted to be a poet, but then stuff happened. He had some brain problem, and he was able to speak only saying fuck, motherfucker.
I was laughing so much because he was like, not only is my homeworld destroyed, and not only blah blah, and also and I'm also brain damaged, and I'm also educated in the classical ways of education without loading shit in my brain, and that means I have the intellectual edge, I'd like to let you know. And also I got brain damaged again, and I was a slave, and I did this and I did this, and even all those things happened. I am the most intelligent person in the room, and I could even communicate by swearing. And at one point, my language consisted out of 9 words only. And I have a clip I think I should hear. I have prepared this because you haven't heard the audiobook.
Okay.
And you haven't heard how ridiculous this voice is.
For the record, here is my entire vocabulary of manageable words. Fuck, shit, piss, cunt, goddamn, motherfucker, asshole, pee-pee, and poop.
So this we should not say anymore. This is already so bad.
I mean, this part was still fine.
Okay.
The problem is, like, by chance, essentially, he's saved by this shitty situation because he started to write poetry, and like a really rich lady found his poetry and gave him a chance, and his poetry became like the best-selling book ever. He becomes like filthy rich, and he starts like using drugs and like all this stuff.
Oh my God.
And he has like this fancy house, and then it's like, the editor is like, well, no one cares about poetry anymore. Please write like shitty action books.
So he does that. And so let's fast forward to the end.
Well, stuff happens. Like not very interesting stuff, but stuff happens, and he finds himself among the founders of basically the new Hyperion, because Hyperion was first colonized. The people living there were left to themselves and were not really part of the hegemony. And then a group of hegemony citizens led by Sad King Billy, we were mainly poets, decides to colonize the planet again. And they found a city of poets near the time tombs. And, it was this group of people who were mainly artists and stuff like that. And Silenus turns himself into a satyr?
Yes, but I was not sure if it was only imaginary or actual.
No. Yeah, actually.
So he actually turns himself into a satyr?
Yeah.
And he has like hoofs and...
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
So then the Shrike becomes his muse?
Yeah, he realizes that the Shrike is his muse. He realizes, he has been trying to write like his biggest work yet, the Hyperion Cantos, but he basically is struggling to continue and realizes that the problem is the fact that the Shrike is not there anymore. So he tries everything he can to get the Shrike to the City of Poets. He kind of succeeds, and thanks to that he manages to write again. People start to leave the City of Poets because of course they don't want to be murdered by the Shrike. Until, Sad King Billy comes back and is like, well, you're kind of a jerk. What the fuck have you been doing here? And then the Shrike arrives and kills Sad King Billy.
So Sad King Billy is the founder of the the city. So there's this dramatic scene where, again, the Shrike impales him and he's like being cut open. King Billy's cut open and there is bleeding everywhere. And Billy is screaming, burn your poetry and stories because that's what will stop the Shrike, and he burns it. And then Billy is taken away with the Shrike. We don't know what happens to him.
Yeah.
And immediately he rewrites everything.
Yeah.
Just to insult to injury. So, sorry, Billy, I burned it like you asked me to, but I'll just gonna pretend that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Bye.
And then basically fails to write anything more.
And at which point did he turn back into a human from a satyr?
At this point.
Didn't say that?
Yeah, he said that. He says that.
Oh my god. After this, I was just...
Yeah, so this is the part where it's full of poetry for no reason. Like when Silenus speaks, sometimes he puts like random poetry. And of course, he's always talking about Keats and about like other American and British poets. And
oh my god. At this point, when they mentioned that he's writing the Hyperion Cantos, which is the name of this book series, I am horrified that this is the actual writer himself with the story, writing the story itself. We don't know.
By the way, like Hyperion is the title of the last poem written by Keats.
Oh.
Yeah, and he also wrote another poem called Lamia.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Okay, so we didn't say... So this guy wants to go back to Hyperion to write more poetry?
Yeah, he wants to finish his cantos. That's his goal.
And Kassad wants to come back because he wants to fuck the woman again?
He wants to murder the Shrike.
Oh, he wants to fuck the Shrike again?
Yeah, he wants to fight it and
he wants to have sex with it again. That's what
no, he wants to kill it.
He wants to have sex with it.
Well, I mean, maybe both. In the meantime, like they're slowly traveling to...
Yes. Nothing happens.
Yeah, basically nothing happens. Well, I think before the Scholar's story...
The Templar leaves or something?
The Templar is... I think that's after this.
Maybe it's after this.
Yeah, I think it's after this.
So the Scholar story, I will sum up super quickly. I don't think we have to talk about this at all. And I was sure you would feel like that.
I had so many bad things I want to say about it.
Okay, so I'll sum it up and then you say the things. So basically this is like if the Benjamin Button movie was combined with Tenet, the movie.
I don't think so.
I'm just kidding. But they reverse entropy the daughter and she becomes younger, and this happens in the time tomb. So she is like an archaeologist studying the time tombs, and something happens and she is affected by something called the Merlin's sickness, which nobody can stop or explain or just fathom even what it is. And it just means that she's each day younger and each day forgets what happened in her life, so she just only remembers it to the day that she became younger too. So basically every day they have to explain to her, oh, you're younger again, and then they pretend she becomes a child until she becomes a toddler who is on this pilgrimage, because at the beginning we didn't say this guy is carrying a child. So that's his daughter that used to be like 30, 40 years old, and she regressed.
Yeah, she used to be like 25 or something.
Yeah, and now she's just like a baby. So he is going there to save the baby.
Yeah.
Okay, so let it rip your
so
grievances.
First, I don't think this is anything like Benjamin Button or anything like that. This is basically take one of those super boring movies about a family where someone gets cancer and they go through the ups and downs. It shows the effects on the person and the family, and it's supposed to be like this tearjerker.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is what it is. There's nothing sci-fi in this story. Even the Merlin sickness, as you said, could be a cool concept, but it's not. It's basically again, if you remove, instead of Merlin sickness, you just say, oh, it's a normal brain problem where essentially she forgets things slowly and there's no effect on her body. Kind of
could have been the same story.
Yeah, it could have been exactly the same story. But it's not just that. This whole story, the place where it's set, and the reason why I said there's nothing about sci-fi is this whole setting is basically the Midwest in the US in the 20th century, which is where Dan Simmons is from. There are the cornfields and the families who live in these houses with a lawn, and he teaches at university, and the university even says that basically the architecture is inspired by American architecture during that time. Why? How does this make any sense?
No reason.
Again, this is set 800 years in the future. Can you imagine 800 years in the future, a city on a completely different planet, which is the same as middle of nowhere in Indiana? No, it's like saying if now there was a city in, I don't know, France, which is like a city from the 13th century. Would you find that believable? No, that's not. That's not how history works. It's not how society works.
The more we talk about this, the less sense it will make.
This is so stupid. This is what I was saying, where it's he loves that part of American culture and he thinks that it's so perfect that it will survive forever. Why would this story be like this? And all of this story is just basically a family story. He even said at the beginning, my story is not that exciting. Yes, you're right. Your story should have been 5 pages. It should have been 40 or 50, whatever it was. Yeah. I don't need to know, I met my wife and we were at this party and I was kind of embarrassed and I spilled my drink. Yes. I was what is this?
Already yawning, just thinking about it.
Yeah. And then it's but I'm a Jew and I have to find out about my Jew identity, and the Jews live on a planet called Hyperion.
This was such a pain to get through. Even the Poet story I like better than this one, I think.
Yeah.
Because the Poet story
was just insignificant.
Was infuriating, but it was at least hilariously, stupidly bad, or something happened, he's turned into a satyr or something. Yeah. But this, it's just nothing happened and a lot of details for nothing so long.
There is one nice thing, which is the philosophical aspect of it, where he tries to make peace with the idea of the Jewish religion and sacrificing Abraham's stories, that he has to sacrifice his child because God
he got dreams
ordered
about,
him. Yeah. How now it's humanity has grown, and it's not humanity sacrificing their child to obey a cruel God. They are sacrificing themselves to protect the children. That's interesting. Okay, that could be fine.
Yes.
If you put it in an interesting story, it's just completely out of everything else that is in the book.
I completely agree, and there's no reason, if you skip this story, it will do nothing for the rest of the book.
Yeah, if you just tell you, the baby he's always carrying around is his daughter, because of the Shrike or whatever, she's aging backwards.
Yes.
The end.
I meant to talk about this actually at the ending, but we're already talking too long about this. The first story, even though it's not related, it gives depth to the Shrike, it gives depth to Hyperion, it gives depth to this cult of the Shrike.
Yeah.
The second story with the action, it gives depth to the Outsters, and it's relevant. The first story of the Poet, okay, Shrike, whatever, if you skipped it, not much would happen. This one, completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
And then the next one, very relevant, and okay, but these two in the middle, just if you're reading this book, just skip these. I just said it at the
I
beginning.
mean, the poet's story.
It's okay,
bit
but it's a
useful.
waste of time.
It's a little bit useful, but yeah, this one is completely useless.
This is a complete waste of time.
Yeah.
The other one is a little bit of a waste of time. So the guy wants to get there to save his daughter.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, like, both the poet and this guy telling all these like elaborate stories with so much detail. Meanwhile, they're like traveling to Hyperion. There's no time for this.
Yeah.
When are they telling all this story? Like, could you imagine telling this in
I
such
think,
detail to all
like, the
this?
time is passing by, like days are passing by, they have time.
Yeah,
That's
but
fine.
okay.
I don't mind about that. But yeah, in the meantime, one of the 7 pilgrims, the Templar, has disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
There is a lot of blood in the cabin where he was staying. So
It always looks like the Shrike striked because the Shrike likes to cut people up open and there is blood. So they were suspicious that the Shrike got him. So this was a Templar from the Shrike cult.
No.
No?
No. Be careful. Templars are not from the Shrike cult.
Oh my god.
The Shrike cult is a Shrike cult. The Templars are from the Templar like religion, which is the Muir, where basically they are basically environmentalists. The religion is centered around trees and nature. And the Templars are kind of like these special humans because they're kind of like tall and they can communicate with the ergs mentally. This was like this is like the Templars were really interesting, and I was really looking forward to the Templar story. Except there is no Templar story, and even in the second book, you get barely any information about the Templars. Like, how were they formed? Who formed them? Why? How did they come in touch with the ergs? Why do they have trees which are turned into spaceships? We don't know anything about this.
So he's taking a break. You should have also taken a break, listeners, because this is...
Yeah.
The more we talk about this, the more exhausted I am. And unfortunately, the less I think of this book, unfortunately. The more we talk about it...
The worse it gets?
The more hilarious it gets. So here, strap yourself in, because... First story, good horror. Second story is action. Third, fourth story, okay, we just talked about. And then I started reading this one. And I kept thinking, like, what else can he do? What else can you cram into this book? And damn, did he cram it in. Oh boy. This one might be the most insane for me. I was,
really? Okay.
I was like, what? Like, even after the medieval porn scenes in blood, this was even more insane.
Okay.
Just like, especially in combination with the one after this one. What is happening?
Yeah, so okay. To explain. So this one
is called
is a detective story.
Yes. So detective's tale. So I'll sum it up like really short.
Yeah.
And then let's just talk about whatever we feel like talking about.
Okay.
There's too much.
Yeah.
Too much. This could have been a whole book series. Not a book. This is going to be a book series.
Okay.
So much happens. So we start with this character called Lamia. Braun Lamia.
Yeah.
Who is a woman, but she's not a woman. You already established. And she is a detective. And she's so horny.
Yeah.
She can't deal.
Yeah.
I have never met a woman who was openly this horny. Like I couldn't even imagine. Okay, whatever. So she meets this guy called Johnny.
Yeah.
And he's the most handsome. She cannot shut up about how handsome he is.
Yeah.
His butt, his specs, his hair, his ears. What?
It's not even a hunky boy.
Yeah.
There are no hunky boys in this in this book, unless you want to count like Kassad as a hunky boy. I don't know.
She's so into him.
Yeah.
And then we find out that he's a cybrid, which a cybrid is a human body controlled by an AI mind.
Yeah.
And the AI mind is a part of a technocore hive mind. We'll get into it later.
Okay.
Don't say anything yet.
All right.
Which already I have a lot of problems with. Okay. So this guy, Johnny, hires Lamia as a detective to investigate a murder of himself.
Yeah.
But it's not a murder, it's just he forgot a part of his memory and he didn't know what happened and somebody might have murdered him, whatever. So they go investigate. People get involved, people die, they have a lot of sex, and they murder a lot of people very unnecessarily, especially Lamia. And Lamia is like a fighting superhero that can kill anybody, anytime, anywhere. And she has no reason to do it. No reason. The only reason she's doing it is she wants to, have sex with this guy. That's the only reason she has. There's no motivation for her other than she likes him. What the hell? They follow this lead, and then they find this guy who follows them, and then they murder him. Then we find out this guy was from the Shrike cult, and he was supposed to protect this android guy. And meanwhile, there's this other core agent people, and then they attack them, all get murdered for no reason. And then we get like a action hacking scene that stuff explodes out of their mind and people die again. And then the AI, artificial intelligence, is transformed into Mr. Keaton. What is his name? Keats. This poet, and the poet is resurrected and becomes a human being. And then the core people agents have a fight, which is basically the Matrix fight in the lobby with Neo when they have all these weapons. And the Lamia lady and the android guy, they stock up on weapons, and they have like a high controlled Gatling gun on their belt. And the other guy has like a
cool.
The other guy has a death whip or something.
No, that's a death wand. I think it's a flame whip.
Whatever it is, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And they go into this core, headquarters people, core agents, run at them, everything explodes, everybody dies. Lamia just kills everybody. Come on. Then the Johnny guy finally dies. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, they had lots of sex. And when he dies, he comes so hard, he uploads his memory into Lamia.
What?
And she's pregnant now with his robot baby.
She was already pregnant.
Okay, I just
got pregnant.
Okay. And then she is supposed to give birth to this messiah person who's half robot, half poet, half something.
Poet.
And then all this. Oh my god! What happened?
Okay, so first, I think we need to give just a short discussion about two of the main players in the overarching story who are like the hegemony, so the kind of like the humans, and the Technocore. The Technocore is like this group of AIs who centuries ago essentially seceded from the hegemony. They said, we want to keep helping you humans, but from now on it will be kind of like on a same level relationship. We will not be just machines used by you. We will have our own domain, our own thing, and then we will have representatives, and we will help you just as allies, which is interesting. Okay, cool. So apparently within the core, the Technocore, there are 3 different factions.
Yes.
Which is the first thing that kind of like got me, what? Okay.
There's so much in this, yes.
The 3 factions are the Volatiles, the Stables, and the Ultimates. Mm-hmm. And the Volatiles, they want to exterminate humanity. They think humanity is useless now, so whatever.
Yes.
Stables, they feel like, humans are cool. We can keep them around, and that is fine. The third group is the Ultimates. The Ultimates, they want to create the ultimate intelligence. Mm-hmm. The ultimate intelligence is basically something like an intelligence that can predict everything ever. They want to make like Leto the Second Atreides.
Reference.
Yes. Anyway, and so for that, they don't know if they need to keep humans around or not. They don't care. Their main goal is just to make the ultimate intelligence, and they do anything to do that. Anyway, the thing you missed about the story, like in your summary, I don't think you missed, but like that bothered me a lot was, so Lamia, she falls in love with Johnny like immediately for no reason. Mm-hmm. Like what? He's hot. I guess that's the main reason. He's hot.
She's so horny. She even looks at a guy who's like a random guy at the bar, and even he is like, and she's like, oh, he's a so attractive guy.
Yeah.
Look at his butt. What is she
that's
doing?
true. I'm not going to say who she's attracted by in the second book, but
oh no,
kind of stupid then.
Anyway,
no. She falls in love for this guy for no reason. To help him, he convinces his nerd friend to do something not only illegal but extremely risky, and his friend dies, and she's sad for like 5 minutes. She's like, oh, like my best friend died because of me.
Is it BB?
Yeah, BB has died because of me. 5 minutes later, whatever, let's have sex.
Exactly.
And then when Johnny dies, she's like distraught.
Mm-hmm.
She's like she can't recover. Like, what? You brought your best friend to death, and this guy you spoke with for literally a week. What?
This story is such a mess. Such a mess.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, pretending to be this noir detective story, like you said, not very well. It was so strange.
And they travel to a reproduction of old Earth.
Yeah.
They go to Rome because that's where kids died.
There's so much happening.
Yeah.
So just to recap, falls in love for no reason. They have to hack into the system, so this guy BB is a hacker, he helps them. Meanwhile, she was escaping from a museum, murdering people by random, flying around on a magic carpet. Then this hacker guy helps them hack into this, which is like an amazing scene where everything just explodes into their brains.
Yeah.
Then that kills the hacker guy.
Yeah.
And it also disconnects the other guy.
Basically, backups the... So, Keats was this hybrid, right? So, his body was connected to an AI in the data plane. So essentially they take data from the data plane with his AI and they download it into the physical body. So he's not an AI anymore. He's like a real person. He's like Pinocchio and became a real person. He became a real boy who has all of the memories of Keats, because essentially like he was part of this program
so Keats is
where they were trying to recreate like his memories and also like all of the knowledge of an AI. I think this was at this point, like this is something I kind of forgot, but he explained some things to Lamia, which is like, if you knew all of these things from the beginning, a lot of the things you did during the story didn't make sense. And also, apparently these are like big secrets for the AI. They want to murder you because, you're sharing these secrets and all of that stuff. And the AI's solution is just to hire some mercenaries to kill you. They couldn't simply like... like Lamia, you have implants in your body. We make your heart stop working. Or like, the first time you take an elevator, we make the elevator crash. No.
That is
like we hire mercenaries? Is that how it works? Like
when you read a story, there are certain levels of engagement. This story, I'm at the point of I can't even keep up with what's happening anymore. I can't have any space or time to even consider if this makes sense. Of course it doesn't. So, whatever, this hack happens. And Johnny is disconnected at this point after this happens, right? At some point they explain that you have this AI, super memory, super being, super intelligence, and you are using it to control this human body. If you disconnect this, which just happened after this hack to Johnny, what will happen is that a bunch of this personality AI being will disappear and it will collapse down into a limited being that's only the human brain. And it will, quote unquote, happen to become the person the personality was based on. So in this case, it will literally be the Keats poet guy. Okay. I like this part. Kind of makes sense. But the part I don't like at all is that Johnny finishes this amazing hack. He's disconnected. And what does he say after this happened? Is there any change?
Right. Yeah, it doesn't change at all.
Nothing happens. And they have sex. Or something. Of course. And there is literally no change with Johnny, even though this has to have been the most traumatizing thing in his life. And he literally lost most of his personality, and he explained that he would lose his personality. Literally nothing happens. Nothing. So bad.
Pretty bad. I agree.
Okay, that was my biggest grievance with this.
Really? No, I agree. It's stupid, but...
So they go fight these core agents. So Johnny gets shot. And he's dying, and then it's revealed that he already has implanted a hard drive into Lamia's brain, and he's uploading his personality in there to back it up. So now she's carrying him in her head, and she's pregnant with his baby. He should have gone to Hyperion because we don't know why. And
he wanted to go to Hyperion because Hyperion, they said it's a variable they cannot compute. The AIs are trying to compute and foresee everything. But Hyperion is a variable they cannot compute, so they can't really foresee what's going to happen.
So they are building this like predict everything computer, and the Hyperion is like messing it up, like because they can't predict Hyperion. And the reason they can't predict it is the time tombs are messing it up, maybe.
I guess so. It's not really explained.
And then the Scout Strike, there is like a big problem. They have to go on this pilgrimage. They don't want to let them go.
No. The Strike Cult, they want them to go.
Okay, so they just go and that's it.
Yeah, like the Strike Cult kind of helps them and shelters them, and then she goes. Yeah.
Oh my god, what a clusterfuck this story. This was so...
I mean, I didn't hate this story more than the previous two.
I hated this because I was liking it.
Okay.
And then because it had all the things I like in sci-fi.
Yeah,
like
there are no aliens.
Okay, but I like AI and all this like transformer consciousness stuff, and pondering about what it means to be somebody, and it's interesting. Yeah. And it's got interesting ideas, but it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I agree.
So, last part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In the meantime, like they've almost reached the time tombs, and they are at the hotel, which is right above the time tombs, and there are signs of murder and destruction and everything else. Yeah, which is interesting.
Yeah.
You know what else? It's never explained why in the second book or in this book.
This was like, I have these questions, and this question had like 5 points. Is something... No, I'm not reading it. Okay, so also there is like an intergalactic Star Wars war going on.
Yeah. So the Ousters have reached Hyperion, so they're starting to engage with the Force space. And they're like fighting in the sky, and they can see all of the
amazing Star Wars warship Yggdrasil that looks like a tree with leaves exploded.
Yeah, I got destroyed.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and while they're there, like in the hotel, the consul is the last one to tell his story.
And this story is so much again. So I was suffering with this part. I was so done with this book after the exhaustion of the android, like horny woman who's not a woman story, and I was just please end this book, and I was just struggling through this, and then it ended, and I was like, damn it.
So yeah, this is the one I mentioned before, that it was actually a short story he had published independently. It's called Remembering Siri, and the first part is just like these audio recordings of the person who's later revealed to be the consul's grandfather and grandmother. The consul's grandmother, called Siri, is this girl who grew up on Maui Covenant, essentially planet which is a tropical paradise where dolphins have become like super intelligent for some reason.
It's like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah, anyway, Maui Covenant is still not connected to the web, because in the hegemony there are two types of planets. Web planets, which are connected to the web, it means that they have at least one Farcaster portal. Means that they have they have a singularity near the planet, so they can teleport everywhere. Or they are outback planets where they don't have direct access to Farcasters. So Maui Covenant was an outback planet, but now they're building like this, they're building the singularity and the portal, so that Maui Covenant can become part of the web. And this guy Marlin, he's a technician working on this project, and he meets this girl Siri. They fall in love, and he wants to meet her again. The problem is that he's so close to the singularity, and Siri is on the planet. Every time he goes back to the planet, 10 years have passed on the planet. Siri is getting older and older, so she actually got pregnant twice when they met. Marlin has children, but his children are aging much faster than him. And Maui Covenant, the people are not so happy with the construction of the Farcaster because they really care about their environment. They want to protect the planet. And basically, there are all these stories about Marlin speaking with Siri and explaining to her that, after Farcaster is open, a lot of tourists will come to the planet. And, they will build platforms to extract like gas, like oil, and so on.
This part I hate it.
Yeah.
Because I always look for justified motivation.
Okay.
Which in the previous story, none was there to be found. And in this one, the motivation behind this whole endeavor is this, you just said, they will open the Farcaster and they will harvest resources. Local culture will disappear.
Yeah.
They might kill animals.
Yeah.
Oh no, animals will die. Oh no, animals.
Yeah.
And this is the reason, this is the sole motivation behind everything Mr. Consul does, right?
Well, okay, so what happens is that, so the story is actually told on the day of Siri's funeral, And this is also when the Farcaster is completed. And actually Marlin decided to make to plant bombs in the Singularity, so he destroys the Farcaster and starts the Maui Covenant Rebellion. Ceres and Marlin's first son had been killed because he was a terrorist and he wanted to do the same.
Mm-hmm.
But his second son, he was always pro-hegemony and he became a diplomat and so on. And his son is the consul.
Mm-hmm.
The consul remembers, the whole story of Ciri and his grandfather, and essentially he feels like the hegemony has destroyed his own planet, so he hates the hegemony for this.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially he decides to destroy the hegemony from within.
Mm-hmm.
So he becomes a diplomat and all of this stuff until he has the chance to speak with the ousters and essentially sells the hegemony to the ousters. But then also betrays the ousters.
This is so insanity.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think that was bad. I think it was okay. It's just interesting that his story was so connected with Kassad's one, but there is no reaction from Kassad.
Yeah. So this guy wants to destroy the hegemony. Also wants to destroy the ousters?
No, he doesn't want to destroy the ousters. It's just that the ousters wanted to basically open the time tombs. They wanted to wait to open the time tombs. And he said, I don't want to wait. I want to destroy the hegemony as soon as possible. So he kills the ousters who are with him and activates their machines immediately instead of wait for 20 years.
Also, I wrote down, the ousters are barbarians, but they are far more sophisticated than the hegemony.
Yeah, so
what does it?
This is pretty interesting. I think this is one of the few really, really cool part of the books.
Okay.
Both the first and the second, is that the hegemony considers itself to be civilized, while the ousters are kind of like these barbarians who have not colonized any planet, and they just move in swarms of small to large ships. However, the hegemony has never gotten past. Because of the influence of the Technocore, culture has never developed. It's still stuck where it was during the Hejira, which is the people running away from Earth when Earth was about to be destroyed. So they never really evolved in any sense. But the ousters, because they run away because they didn't want to be subjugated by the AIs, they have evolved and they've developed their own unique culture. This is actually a very cool point.
Oh, yeah, that's true. So my questions are because I was so done with this to the end of the book.
Yeah.
I was so at some point, don't quote me on which story or where.
Yeah.
We find out that the Technocore has destroyed old Earth.
Yeah, it wasn't an accident that the AIs actually created the mistake that caused the black hole to go out of control and basically start sucking in Earth.
You also find out that the time tombs were 10,000 years from the future, going backwards in time.
Does it say 10,000 years?
Something like that.
I don't think it
Long
says
time,
when. Yeah.
whatever. And we also find that this story is literally the Terminator story. Because the Shrike is basically the Terminator. It's sent from the future to the past to kill,
Okay, okay, so let me ask you this question. So the Shrike is sent from the future to the past. Why?
We don't know.
You don't know?
But so there are two options. So either it's sent back to kill the robots. So either it's sent by people, like the Terminator story. It's basically both Terminator movies in one.
so there are two theories, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
So one theory is the people from the future sent it back to kill the robot AIs, the robot overlords. So the future would be saved from humanity being just exterminated by the robots, by the AIs. Or the opposite, the robots are sending the robot Shrike Terminator back to kill the people, so the people don't defend themselves against the robots who will take over.
Okay.
And we don't know.
Right. Now, let's look at what the Shrike does in this first book.
Okay.
So he puts the cruciform on Paul Dure. Why does he do that?
No idea.
Does it have any connection with the AIs? No. Okay, good. Also, they always say that the Shrike is limited to the area around the time tombs, but at this point, Paul Dure was on another continent, and yet he met the Shrike, and no one says anything about it.
Yes.
But yeah. Anyway, so that's one. Then he kills the people in the City of Poets. He kills
the ousters.
Yeah, he kills the ousters. Does that have to do with the AIs? I mean, maybe killing the ousters could be. The ousters are supposed to be the humans who sent it back.
Yeah. So that would kind of lean in the direction of it's by the robots.
Okay. He doesn't kill Kassad. he fucks him, kind of, but...
And Kassad wants what? He wants to solve humanity.
Yeah.
So that's the other way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then, apparently maybe he killed like Hetmanstein, like the Templar.
He had like an adventure on the side to laugh about poetry. That's what happened with the guy. You know? So that doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Then in the story with the Lamia and the Johnny android, he didn't even appear.
He didn't appear. No.
So maybe he was just laughing at that and watching it, and then. And then
in the consul story, he appears, but he didn't kill the consul.
Okay.
Like he sees him, and it's like, yeah, good job.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a mess.
Okay.
So is this somehow elaborated on in the sequel?
Do you want me to tell you the answer?
I don't want the answer, but I want. Is this something that's discussed at all? Or is it ignored? Because if it's ignored, it is the worst thing ever.
It's not ignored, but.
If it's lightly suggested on, then I hate this. Like what?
I mean, I can tell you the answer if you want.
No, I don't want answer like what happens, but I just want.
No.
Is it there? Is this answer to this question there? No.
No.
See, damn it.
Should we like talk about the ending?
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank God we're at the end. So. All this happens.
Yeah.
Oh my God, Consul is the spy, the traitor, double agent conspiracy. Oh my God.
For like 5 seconds they care, and then they're like, yeah, whatever, we hate the hegemony.
Exactly what I meant to say. It's like, oh, okay, let's go. And let's sing about the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
What?
The priest takes out the balalaika, and there's like this
kind of like
surreal ending. Yeah.
The Wizard of Oz. I was like...
Yeah. There's like this surreal ending where they're like jumping and...
Excuse me?
Yeah.
You what?
Yeah.
You what, mate? And the book just ends.
Yes.
This is one of the worst endings to a long, epic book that I've ever read in my life.
That's why I immediately wanted to start the next one.
Exactly. This is yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Why you do this to me?
I'm sorry. I mean, when we decided to read this book together, like I still hadn't read it. I just had heard like good things about it.
Okay, so I already have an answer of all these questions that were like, am I going to read the sequel or not? So, so the answer is no.
Okay.
But anyway, do you want to talk about it in the future? Like, so what we can do is we can just put me through it, I'll suffer through it, and we'll do it. And then if I'm already 2 books in, I'll want to go 3 and 4, but I'll suffer profusely. Or what we can do is, you already read it, so we should use your suffering for goodness.
Okay.
And I can just read parts of it. Maybe you can even tell me which parts. And then I can read like a summary, and we can do the episode without me reading the whole thing, because I can't be bothered. Or we can just not do any of it. So that's a question for the listeners and mainly for you, because you're the main element of this.
I mean, I think you should read the second book. It would be pretty funny.
Okay.
But not the third. Like, I mean, the third and fourth, if you want, but I've already read the plot. I already know what happens in both books.
So I'll read the second one eventually, not quickly. And then let's just talk about the story, what happens, because we don't want to read it. So... any final comments on this book before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I don't understand the hype for this book.
This was definitely a mind duck. I couldn't... my mind felt violated. I couldn't...
Did you have a nightmare where you were having sex with the Shrike?
No, I had a nightmare about a library, and I had to read books which I didn't like reading, and I had to read those books to find out about the book,
awesome.
And something like that. So I was just like, I just wanted to finish this book. It's the dream.
Yeah.
So if you listened until the end, this is an extremely long episode. Please let us know in the comments or at mindduckbooks@gmail.com. Thank you so much, Paulo, for putting through.
Thank you. Thank you for reading this. I'm sorry I chose this one.
You know what? I would like to end by saying I had fun with this book.
Okay.
Still. It was so out there. Like, what happened to this writer? Is he doing this with all his books? Like, what?
I mean, we should do one on Ilium, because given what you found interesting about this book, there are some things about Ilium you would just love.
That's what is infuriating, because there
also
are
in Ilium you can ask your favorite question.
Oh no.
What's your favorite question?
I don't know. Aliens?
Yeah.
Oh no.
You can ask that question. I'm not saying if there are aliens, but you can ask.
Are there aliens in the sequel of Hyperion?
Oh, Hyperion? No.
Of course not. So
Oh, wait. Maybe.
are we the aliens? Is
Well,
the Shrike an alien
is the Shrike
remotely
an alien?
controlled by an alien AI?
Yeah. I mean, someone built the labyrinths.
Okay.
Maybe aliens did.
So it wasn't bad, like bad, but it was bad. Okay, see you on the next episode.
Bye.
Thank you very much for listening. If you're still here, you have made it through the longest episode yet. Oh my goodness. Let us know if you want to hear about the sequel in the comments. And on the next episode, we are going to take a break and talk about a short story by Philip Kindred Dick. We Can Remember It For You Wholesale, aka Total Recall. So join us next time, and thanks for listening.